Watch the screen. A small boat on dark water. A flash. An explosion. The boat is gone. This has happened 58 times. In the last 8 months alone, the United States military has destroyed 59 vessels at sea. At least 194 people are dead. The targets were not warships, not terrorists in caves. They were small boats, accused of carrying drugs across the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. For decades, the rule was simple: stop the boat, arrest the crew, send them to court. That rule no longer exists. The new policy is to destroy them on sight. And here is the strangest part of the story. A 4-star American admiral, the man in charge of this entire region, walked away from his command in silence. He never explained why. This is Operation Southern Spear, and in the next few minutes, you will understand exactly what is happening, why it is legal on paper, and why it might be a war crime in practice. Part 2. The context when cartels became terrorists. To understand the strikes, you need one key date: February 2025. That month, President Trump signed an order placing 10 major drug cartels onto the United States list of designated terrorist organizations: Tren de Aragua, the Sinaloa Cartel, Jalisco New Generation. All of them suddenly were no longer criminals. They were enemies of war. This single change rewrote the rules. A criminal gets arrested. A terrorist gets targeted. And once cartels were classified as terrorists, the Pentagon argued that America was now in armed conflict with them. That is the legal foundation for everything that followed. The Department of Defense has also been renamed. It is now called the Department of War. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, has put the policy in plain language. If you want to live, stop trafficking drugs. That is not a warning. That is a death sentence delivered in advance. And here is the part worth thinking about. Once a policy is framed as a war on terror, every legal break is removed. No warrants, no trials, no evidence required. The question is no longer whether the policy is legal. The question is where it stops. Part 3. Operation Southern Spear. The timeline. The operation has a name: Joint Task Force Southern Spear. It is run by United States Southern Command, known as SOUTHCOM, and it represents the largest American naval deployment to the region since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The first strike came on September 2nd, 2025. A boat leaving Venezuela. 11 men dead. President Trump released the video himself. From there, the pace accelerated. By late October, the strikes spread from the Caribbean into the Eastern Pacific. By the end of last year, 3 boats could be destroyed in a single day. Then came the turning point. January 3rd, 2026. Operation Absolute Resolve. American aircraft struck targets inside Venezuela itself. Explosions over Caracas. And by the end of that day, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro had been captured by American forces and flown out of the country. He is now in New York, facing drug trafficking charges. He has pleaded not guilty. Stop and think about that. The boat strikes were sold as a drug operation. The operation ended with the removal of a foreign president. That is not law enforcement. That is regime change. After Maduro fell, the strikes briefly paused. By late January, they resumed. By March, they had crossed into a new phase. American forces, working with Ecuador, struck targets on land for the first time. As of May 8, 2026, the numbers are these: 58 strikes, 59 boats destroyed, at least 194 people killed, 15 vessels hit in the Caribbean, 31 in the Eastern Pacific, the rest in waters the Pentagon refuses to name. Survivors are almost unheard of. Part 4. The backlash, legality, and human cost. Now let us look at why this is so controversial. Go back to the very first strike. September 2nd, 2025. According to Reuters and the Associated Press, after the initial missile destroyed the boat, a second strike followed. It hit the survivors in the water. Legal experts call this a double tap. Under the laws of armed conflict, deliberately targeting people who are wounded, drowning, or no longer able to fight is one of the clearest war crimes on the books. Not a gray area, a war crime. Inside Congress, the response has crossed party lines. Republican Senator Rand Paul has demanded one thing the Pentagon has never provided: evidence. How do we know the people on these boats were cartel members? Democratic Congressman Jim Himes has called the strikes extrajudicial killings, plain and simple. Internationally, the United Nations Special Rapporteur Ben Saul accused Washington of lawless violence that violates human rights. Colombia and Venezuela have publicly accused the United States of murder, but the deepest crack is inside the American military itself. Admiral Alvin Halsey took command of SOUTHCOM in November 2024. He was the first African American to ever hold that post. He was supposed to serve 3 years. He lasted less than 14 months. That is a warning flare. And then there are the names you almost never hear. Chad Joseph, a fisherman from Trinidad and Tobago. His family believes he was killed in an American strike last October. They are still asking for any evidence that he was a drug trafficker. So far, they have received nothing. How many of the 194 were Chad Joseph? Nobody can answer that. And that, more than anything else, is the problem. Part 5. Conclusion and call to action. So where does this leave us? The United States is now using military force to solve what used to be a law enforcement problem. The fentanyl crisis is real. The damage cartels cause is real. But the price of this new approach, measured in lives and in international law, is enormous. The central question never goes away. Were all 194 of those people really narco-terrorists? Or were some of them fishermen, low-level couriers, or simply men in the wrong boat at the wrong time? If we cannot answer that, we are not fighting a war. We are carrying out executions and calling it something else. And here is my honest read. The capture of Maduro tells you the boats were never the only goal. They were the cover story. The campaign was always bigger than drugs, and the strikes in Ecuador in March suggest this template will be used again in other places against other targets. So I leave you with this. Is military force against suspected drug boats a necessary tool to protect national security? Or is it a violation of human rights, dressed up as self-defense? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them. If this video helped you understand the story, hit like, share it, and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next, because this story is just getting started.